Whenever there is a conversation about big bang reforms in India, one of the top priorities on that list that you will hear about is always labour reform. Now, the cabinet cleared a host of proposals yesterday, and while all the focus has been on divestment of HPCL and other public sector enterprises or the relief to the telecom sector, an equally important move has been for the cabinet to approve the Labour Code on Industrial Relations 2019, which effectively allows companies to hire workers on fixed term contracts of any duration. There is also some leeway on allowing large companies to retrench, but perhaps more is needed on this. To talk us through the first moves towards labour reforms and to see how they are being received, I'm joined today by Pradeep Bhargav, President of MCCIA, and Vasudevan, President of the New Trade Union Initiative. And giving us the corporate point of view today on the panel is Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan, MD and CEO of Thermax. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us on the India Development Debate. Mr. Unnikrishnan, let me begin by getting your sense of what has been announced so far and what remains to be announced. I think the big point to highlight is the fact that the 100 worker cutoff, which is that if you employ more than 100 workers, you have to take prior permission from the government to retrench any worker. There is some kind of an effort to give leeway on that. Would you have liked to see more?
What we have asked the government to do when they were subsuming multiple laws in one code was that give us flexibility and a level playing field to survive in the market. That portion alone is kept aside and the government has done the rest of it. But in the first place, we certainly appreciate the government, congratulate the government for having taken this step and moving ahead with many other chapters being corrected. Because there are 107 sections and 13 chapters in one labor code alone. So that is good enough for the country. But what we expected was that none of us are here to shut down a unit if it is viable. But an unviable unit to be shut down, then we need to take a permission from the government with even 100 numbers of workers. Please remember, predominant part of even MSME will be employing 100 workers per factory. So that is something which we would expect the government to help us further. I know there are limitations, there are political challenges, and it's not an easy task for the government to do, but we look forward to that support to come. Otherwise, we congratulate the government at this juncture.
Absolutely, but I want to come to you in a little bit more of detail before I open up the debate, Mr. Unnikrishnan. When you say what you've asked government for, and I want to also contextualize this for everyone who's watching, that we're in the middle of an economic slowdown right now. We are hoping that industry can, pull itself up, invest more. We want to attract investment from outside at a time when the focus is shifting away from China. How crucial is the change in labor laws in that context? And if you can mention 2-3 things which specifically need to change. Just 44 laws into 4 codes is a great idea, but perhaps much more needs to be done.
Certainly, since we do operate also our factory in China and are exposed to the kind of laws which are prevailing over there, there are certain basic hygiene to be maintained in terms of when you employ labor, what are the kind of benefits that you're going to give. But the term is not permanent in most of the parts of the world. With the kind of uncertainty that prevailed in every part of the world, China gives you flexibility. We just shut down a factory over there and we had to ask for the law, give certain quantum of compensation for the workmen, very minimal, not even equal to the gratuity that is payable in the country. And the local government gave us, not even the local government, the mayor's office gave us a permission to shut down the entire unit. Whereas in India, just imagine, if I were to have more than 101 warm bodies in a particular factory, then even if the unit is unviable, the state government has got to give a permission to shut it down. And in the current juncture, with all the uncertainties prevailing in the labor market, which state government will give you a permission to shut it down? You will continue to be running a loss-making factory just because we had the guts to start a factory earlier. So that is something which we need to be changing. The laws were made maybe 50 years back when the global situation was different. We are a part of the global market. The labor market has got to also rise up. None of us are wanting an exploitation of labor. So the fixed term employment addition added over there I certainly, Tamanna, agree on that. It gives some amount of flexibility. But in that, we are ensuring that instead of employing a labor through a contractor who will exploit them or not give them all the benefits, we are now being given the honors of employing him directly for any term that we feel is right for the viability of the factory. One fact I want to again tell you, losing a qualified and skilled labor is a major danger for the management than for the union, because skill is very important. So none of us are interested in ensuring that we shut down units for money. Certainly no.
What we love to do here on the India Development Debate is get all sides of the stories, which is why I also have Mr. Vasudevan with us today, who represents the union voice. Mr. Vasudevan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Vasudevan, just your first responses. We had a conversation here with Mr. Unnikrishnan. He can hear you as well. I have Pradeep Bhargav as well on the panel. And you've seen what the cabinet has approved yesterday. Do you think you are ready for change?
Before we speak about changes, it is necessary for everyone to understand that the existing laws, the existing labor laws are not implemented in a manner that is very necessary. The workers in the organized sector, in unorganized sector, they do not have any rights whatsoever, and they do not even have a piece of paper to establish that they work in an organization. And if workers are not paid even the minimum wages that is agreed, there is no mechanism existing today for them to go and make a complaint. And now the new changes that government is proposing is to take away all the existing rights. Trade unions are not against labor reforms, but before we speak about reforms, we must understand what are the maladies existing today. And the primary consideration for the government is to sit with the trade unions in this country to discuss with them what changes are required. 1 year ago, government implemented fixed term employment.
Yes.
And the fixed term employment has changed the entire rights of the working people.
But they have also said, Mr. Vasudevan, that yesterday the finance minister said that those on fixed term contracts now will be given the same rights and benefits as full-time employees for the duration that they are under contract. That has come after talking to trade unions.
These are empty assurances given again and again by the ministers and many representatives of the government. And in fact and reality, workers are employed in thousands. I know in one case where I represent the workers, every 3 months the employer employs workers on a rate of wages they decide, though in that factory there is a settlement and workers are supposed to get a certain amount of wages decided between the union and the management, but employer will not give even a piece of paper for the workers to establish that they work in that organization. So the promise that is coming from the minister that all benefits should be extended to the workers is an empty promise. It doesn't have any support from any quarters. Workers cannot go anyway. So the flexibility they are talking about, the labor reforms they are talking about, without taking the existing unions into consideration, no meetings are taken place so far. And this is only to increase exploitation and destroy the trade union movement.
Okay, Mr. Bhargav, I want you to come in. You know, we know that the minister has said yesterday that there have been consultations with trade unions, and I don't think any government can afford to make lakhs of workers unhappy. So where do you keep that balance?
I want to bring the context, Tamanna. There have been consultations. Unni and I have been party to large number of tripartite consultation We have had meetings with the standing committee in case of the wages code. So I think there is a consultation. Now, consultation doesn't necessarily mean consensus. And I think we need to acknowledge sometimes the employers come out of the consultation not necessarily agreeable to everything. So I think we need to understand that this is a process. We need to be, let's say, reasonable enough to acknowledge. To the point that you made in the beginning, Tamanna, if I could step in, you talked, frankly speaking, this, and I air Uni's view, is commendable, because while the government has understood the need for flexibility of the employers and employees too, they have also taken, for the first time I noticed, a flexibility under the law, where they said, for example, this number 100, they said we can change it by notification, rather than going to the parliament and to the assembly. I think this is remarkable, considering the fact that the laws are being amended after 40, 50 years, and we're going to have 4 lakh, it was extremely important to go through. You recognize this, it has taken us 5 years to come to this IR code. It's a long process. So I think I would commend. And to the point that was made earlier, you see, closing down happens once in a time for very few organizations. We have to look at what are the laws applicable for ongoing organization. All of us are there to get into employment and get into work. Fixed term employment, I think, is landmark. And it just takes away, as only said, exploitation, abuse, misuse, everything away, and it brings in. But please, and I said this once before, while we employers have got the flexibility to hire, when to hire, who to hire, how many to hire, we cannot take the flexibility of treating them differently. We don't have the flexibility, thank God, of abusing, misusing. We have to give them same compensation, same facilities as we get to a permanent. I think it's commendable. It gives us the flexibility where we need it.
Well, Mr. Bhargav, the fact of the matter is labor is a concurrent subject. So this is step 1, isn't it? You have to get various states to implement this. That has always been part of the issue, and implementation is at the core of the problem. Even what Mr. Vasudevan is saying is about existing laws and how do you implement it? Do workers also get those rights?
Yeah. Well, answer to your question, that's true for everything in government. There are lots of subjects which are concurrent, power is concurrent, labor is concurrent, and so on. So we need to acknowledge that there is a system working. To make it happen, for example, take up the wage bill which has become a wage act. The minimum wages, central government has said, look, we'll tell you the bare minimum. You choose to give above that. Now that's the thing which respects the state. Here once again, what the central government is saying, 100 numbers is what we are saying. But if you feel the need, as Rajasthan and other government did, make it 200, 300, go ahead and do it. So I think the respect for the state is very much there. But you cannot have respect in areas like occupation, safety, health. There has to be a central or a common fiat. I think implementation is a challenge for all of us. But Uni and I have been running companies where we do give appointment letters, we give salaries, we give provident fund, we do every single thing. To say that nobody does anything is all transactions which are unscrupulous, not visible, is not true. A lot of SMEs who work for large companies like the one I work with, they also take care of PF and so on. So it's not as shoddy. Yes, a totally unorganized informal sector is beyond the, honestly speaking, beyond the scope of any government anywhere unless the local bodies take over.
Yeah, so that's an important point. We're talking about the formal sector, which by itself accounts relatively for a minuscule amount of employment in this country. Mr. Vasudevan, you want to come in on some of the points that Mr. Bhargav has made? It's an open debate. If you want to come in, please indicate and I'll come to you. Yes, Mr. Vasudevan.
No, we are in a situation where there is no generation of employment at all, and there is acute unemployment in the country, and those who get job, they take job for any price, any number of hours. Now, in theoretical language, they say that workers are supposed to work for 8 hours or 9 hours, but unlimited number of hours people work. I know specific cases where workers are not provided with even provident fund, ESI, and all the statutory benefits. If a worker is employed, fixed term or even otherwise, and there is a minimum wage prescribed in that sector, industry, where the worker will go? Workers do not have organization, workers, there is no government authority. What the government is now trying to do is to take away the existing system. The workers can go to an inspector, workers can go to a government. They say now everything will be digitalized. Now a contract worker, a worker who doesn't have any power, authority and organization in an organization, that worker has been given a right that you can go to a computer, you can get information from all authorities, you can make a complaint. This is only it's like fooling the people, that's all.
No, so again, Mr. Vasudevan, you're
as
coming
a,
back to the same point of
trade union person
implementation.
with many
You're
years of
coming back to the same point of implementation. So, you know, as Mr. Bhargav
No,
said, that is the
they
case
knew-
with a
they
lot
knew
of laws
that-
in
the-
this
the-
country. You have to implement them, but that doesn't mean that you don't change the laws. Okay, Mr. Bhargav wants to quickly come in. Can I just let him come in before you respond? Yes, Mr. Bhargav.
Yeah, I just, yeah, the point, Tamanna, here is, and Mr. Vasudevan, there is a lot of abuse, misuse happening, let's say, in the informal sector, unorganized sector, and I'm not holding a brief for them. The attempt of fixed-term employment is convert more and more informal workers into formal. Today, if I have to hire somebody, like Unni's company, which has a project for a finite duration, or L&T does something, or I have a seasonal job, if I hire on my payrolls, after 180 days, he or she becomes my permanent workforce, which I don't need. Fixed-term employment, so what do? I get a contractor and say, Baba, hire some people for me at this site because I can't take him on my payroll. And once a contractor comes in, whether PF, abuse, etc. takes place beyond a point, the principal employer can't. But by bringing in fixed-term employment, Tamanna, what am I being told? I have a project somewhere, I have a seasonal demand, I will hire on my payrolls for 18 months or 24 months and think. Moment they are on my payrolls, PF, ESI, every single thing that Mr. Vasudevan talks about comes in. So here's a great attempt to convert informal workforce into formal workforce. Frankly speaking, I mean, come to think of it, it's going to cost the employers much more. My headcount will go out officially, otherwise contractors I don't even show. I'll have within quotes more liability. So I should be complaining. We're not, because we know these people on my payrolls under my supervision. I can train them, and if some of them are good, I'll take them permanent. So fixed-term employment is replacing contract workers, not permanent. The point that Mr. Vasudevan is saying is that there is abuse. I'm not even denying that. But in the sector where people want to do properly, fixed-term, a lot of us, large companies, including public sectors, had no choice but to go to contract workers. Today, we don't have to. Fixed-term gives us
That's a big change.
the flexibility to get them on our payroll.
Mr.
It's a great
Unikrishnan
move.
wants to come in.
Take
Yes.
it to the formal sector.
Yes. Yes.
That's a big change.
Tamanna.
It's like GST.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Unikrishnan.
See, one thing my people like Vasudevan and those who represent unions have to be understanding is certainty of business and certainty of jobs are disappearing from the market. In the gig world, the principles of yesteryears are not going to be applicable. And the people who are going to be joining the employment arena are going to be millennials. They are very modern in thinking, not like the leaders of India. I'm talking about the labor leaders included in that one. They have all the more social media available to put a pressure on the management of the company and certainly ensure that their rights are protected. In 21st century, it is not the courts which are going to be deciding. Let's have the clarity. That's why the government is talking about less and less government. So we are with that only.
Yeah.
And like Mr. Bhargava mentioned about, we have to ensure that there is a collectivity of labor without unions from external forces with political angle bringing in and trying to hold managements to ransom. That is going to be going away, Mr. Vasudevan, in this country. We have to be changing and becoming modern. If you expect that the investments are going to come from abroad, where there is freedom available for an investor to come and employ people and follow all the laws of the country, you need to give them flexibility. Otherwise, all the great plans that we've got, when you said that, I'm sorry to say that, India is creating employment, but unfortunately, it is becoming in the informal sector or even in the formal sector in the informal way because the laxity of the kind of laws or maybe the modernity of the law which has to be brought in. And the way the current government is addressing it, it is commendable. I'm not holding any, anything for any party or any government, but at least we can see that the archaic laws are getting away and we are making it modern to suit the millennial workforce. What you're talking, Mr. Vasudevan, belongs to possibly a century back thinking. We need to be modern. And our workers are not such helpless people today. They know how to get together. And I'm sure we could work together, government, the workmen, and the management, to ensure that India goes ahead and in that we create employment rather than telling that nobody is implementing it. Then we'll remain where we are. We will not move ahead. So
Okay.
my plea to all of you is that let us look forward and think ahead.
Okay, I want Mr. Vasudevan to respond to the point that you made about a new kind of economy and a fast disappearing system worldwide. Though I must add that I think we are some time away in India from the kind of gig economy that you're describing, Mr. Unikrishnan, or maybe those are in very small pockets as far as formal employment happens. But Mr. Vasudevan, the point that Mr. Unikrishnan is making about changing with the times, and you yourself said we're in a very low employment era right now. Should the focus be on making more people employable or safeguarding those who are already employed?
Very good.
You know, it is there is no doubt that more people should get employment. And what's happening now? What the entire approach appears to be creating more and more informalization of jobs. Permanency and security of employment and long-term employment, etc., is out of the question and very clear. The government's intention is very clear. Whatever others may try to say, there is no provision made in any of the courts, any of the proposals coming to take care of the interests of the workers and their families, and that is very clear. There is nowhere it is mentioned that what will be the number of working hours for a person, and where the jobs are coming. Jobs are scattered in many places. All big industries are gone. New technology is coming.
Yeah.
When workers are looking for jobs, the jobs are replaced by machinery. Robots are coming.
Yes.
The new factories, 120 workers, 150 workers, those workers are being handled by new machines, new technology that is coming.
What is
We
the
are not
point?
against technology.
Yes, yes.
We want jobs to be given and jobs to be protected.
That's fine.
If a person meets with an accident in the factory, where shall he go?
No, it is.
You
it
cannot
is
go to an
within,
inspector.
No,
No
it
factory
is within the
is-
law.
I get
Inspection
your
system
point
has
about
been shoddy implementation, Mr. Vasudevan. I get your point about shoddy
Every-
implementation, and that is a serious concern.
right is given to the self certification.
Yeah.
The right to self certification is given to the employer. The employer will say, I am paying this wage, I am paying minimum wage,
Okay.
I am
Wait.
paying all the statutory benefits, and I am taking care of the health of the worker. Everything is given to the employer.
So is there no?
Why the
is there-
workers
is-
can go?
Yeah. So is there nowhere to go? What about the labor courts? Is that system completely defunct? I just want to get a quick word from Mr. Bhargav. Yes, Mr. Bhargav.
Yeah, if anything, Tamanna, enlightened trade union in private conversation have been telling us, आपसे permanence काम आएंगे, आप खुद ही permanent नहीं है. They recognize that industry in its present complexion has a level of uncertainty. However, while we are working with you, give us dignity, give us equity, give us social security. So the name of the game is not about permanence. Name of the game is about certain amount of ethics and equity and so on. Which is exactly, if you go into occupational health and safety, if you go in the minimum wages, the wage code, and even here, there is huge provisions which demands, he talked about working hours, it defines working hours over time. Now, if somebody doesn't implement, we can't debate beyond a point. Every single, in fact, I find the occupational health safety which has gone to the select committee is an outstanding piece of document,
Yeah, but
which
it's-
brings out every single thing.
Yeah.
Even wages bill brings out all elements. But अगर implement नहीं होगा तो Tamanna, we have no answer to that.
No, but
Of
they-
course
but
it's
we-
getting
no,
implemented
but
at
we need
places,
to- we need
and as
to.
Unni said,
As-
there are mechanisms to.
Yeah, I'm glad that the fact is that there are conversations. There are conversations between management, trade union and the government. They need to continue. A middle
Yeah.
ground has to be found because we have a far way to go. This is just first baby step towards labor reforms, and implementation is something that government of the day has to take up.
Yeah.
Unscrupulous contractors have to be made an example off, and workers also have to feel that someone's watching out for them. It works both ways and for everyone. So here's to hoping for a lot more coming in on the labor front. We have to compete with the rest of the world, and we need to change some of our laws sooner than later. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the debate this evening, and with that, it's a wrap on the India Development Debate. I'll see you back here tomorrow.